There it is. Hey guys, welcome. I'm Carly. I'm an educator here at Singer, coming to you live from our office in downtown Nashville. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're doing a really easy beginner project. Great for if you're just starting out learning to sew. Anyone can do this project. It's super easy. We're doing these utility aprons. They're pretty simple, not a lot to them. You can kind of make them how you want as far as how many pockets and the size of the pockets. The one I'm going to be teaching today is like this one up here that has these little tie-around straps, but I wanted to show you another example. I made this one with a buckle strap as well. If you wanted to make a variation, you would apply the straps when you sew them in kind of the same way how we're going to sew in the tie ones, but you would just insert buckles instead. But I also added a couple of loops on the side for, like tools, or if you want to add like your keys, something like that. But let's get started. So today I'm using the Singer Heavy Duty 6700C. It's a computerized machine. It's heavy duty. It's great for sewing through these thicker materials. So today I am using a mix of denim as well as some canvas material. It's a utility apron. So if you're out working in the yard or doing construction work, gardening, things like that, it's a great project for those types of uses. So to get started, I'm going to flip it over to this camera here. Now in my write-up, I put all the dimensions of the fabric you're going to need to cut. So you could follow along with this little chart here, just showing you the sizes, all of that. But what you're going to need is for the main part of the apron, you're going to need two of these larger rectangles. Right now I just have one on the bottom, and later I'll show you when we insert the top one. You're going to need to cut two longer straps and then two for your pocket size. Now the size in the pamphlet is you would cut it out like this size. And then first you're going to fold them in half, and I would press along these edges. Now I already pressed these. And then fold your smaller pocket as well. So when you place them on the main back piece, you would stack them like this. So this will be your larger pocket, and this would be your smaller pocket. So the first thing I'm going to do actually before we start putting it together is once you have your pockets folded and pressed like this, I'm going to just add a simple top stitch along the top edge. That will just keep it from getting kind of puffy here and also give it a cleaner, crisp look. So I already did this top stitch here, but I'm going to show you now adding this top stitch along this edge. Now I'm going to do it closer to the edge. I would say about 1/4 of an inch up along the top here. And if you want to use a contrasting thread to kind of give it a decorative look, I use like a purple thread to match, my back piece. So I'm going to switch my camera over. There you guys. So for this top stitch, I'm just using a regular straight stitch, and I'm going to use a standard stitch length of 2.5. So for 1/4 of an inch, I'm going to line it up basically kind of where the inside of this presser foot ends. And you're just going to follow along the top edge and create that top stitch. So it will be visible with a top stitch, try and keep your line straight as you can. Adding this little top stitch. And then okay. Now you can see I did that top stitch there. So once you have that done on both of your pockets when they're folded, you're going to line it up along here. Now, one thing I want to know, if you wanted your pockets to be different size, if say you wanted a larger pocket or you only wanted one pocket, and you didn't want this, you could totally play around with it however you want based on your needs. So once you have these lined up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip it around this side edge here. You can use pins. I like to use clips. And just a couple. Don't need to go too crazy. This part that we're sewing right now, you won't really see it. It's just gonna be kind of a stitch, it's just gonna be a seam to just hold it in place. So later when we put the top part on and we sew around, it doesn't slide around. So I'm actually gonna just sew, and technically you could put the top on later and sew it in then, but like I said, I don't want it to slide around. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start at one corner. And for this part, I would still stick to that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance or closer to the edge, because later we're gonna do a wider seam allowance and we wanna make sure we don't see that stitch. So I'm just gonna go all the way down. Every time I get to a corner, I'm gonna pivot till I get back up to here. Now I already sewed on one of these straps. I'm gonna show you how to do the strap in a minute, but you can just ignore that for right now. Back to my machine. I'm gonna use the same straight stitch and stitch length. If you want, you could actually, you know, I'm gonna bump my stitch length up just a tad bit because I am going through multiple layers. And I don't know if I mentioned this already. I already forget what I'm saying here. But I did put in a denim needle today because I am sewing through those thicker denim materials. I'm gonna start right here, just above this pocket piece. And I'm gonna sew closer to this edge. With good back stitch to secure it. I can go a little bit, get in a good spot, pivot and turn it. I go. And this seam allowance right here might look a little wider, but this fabric I have here is overlapping a little bit. So I want to make sure I catch all these edges. So that's why I'm kind of in a little bit further. So it looks. So now you sewed in the main part of the pockets. Now I'm going to go back to this one. So right now, if you wanted to have 2 huge pockets, you could, but this isn't very sturdy, obviously. You want to make your pocket sizes. So now this is kind of when you can make it your apron how you want. So for my other one, I just kind of like thought about the types of tools I want for my apron or how I'm gonna use it. And then I just took a ruler and I took some chalk. You could use like a heat removal pen, or you could honestly just mark it with a pin and eyeball it. But for instance, I know I'm gonna maybe put like my phone or something in this pocket. So I want it to be just a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna mark a line there. And I'm gonna chalk to gauge where I want that pocket. And then I want a really big pocket. I'm gonna do two smaller ones on the side and then a bigger one in the middle. So I'm gonna go about this big. My second marking. All right. Now, say you wanted one pocket to not be as deep, you could also add like a line here, or if you wanted to have, you know, this pocket here to not go all the way deep, you could add another stitch here and just have the shorter one on each side. But this is how I want mine to be. So next, what you're going to do is similar to how we just sewed around here, except for you're going to just start at this top point, or you can start at the bottom, and you'll do forward, back stitch, and just sew all the way along these two lines, and that will give your pocket shape.
So Carly, we don't have any questions yet, but I wanted to ask, it's really important to make a, oh gosh, like that back stitch at the top, right?
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
So it's important because over time, especially when you're using these pockets, you're putting tools in, it's gonna have that wear and tear, and this seam could rip and open really easily. So that back stitch, think of it as like a knot or a lock in your seam, and it protects it from opening up. So when you get to this point, you really want to make sure you do a good back stitch a couple times to secure it in place, because you know, with wear and tear, that could definitely open up, especially if you're putting in heavy tools and things like that. And I'm gonna start on the side that is at the top of the pocket, only because that way I can get it positioned. I'm gonna start a little bit over the edge, so that way when I do my back stitch, and you saw me do that back stitch earlier, sometimes the speed, actually I'm gonna slow my speed down at this, so I don't go too crazy. All right, so I have it lined up. Can't really see it, but on my chalk line. And I'm gonna tuck this strap out of the way. So I'm gonna start here. Sometimes I want to make sure I'm in a good spot. So I'm gonna go forward just a little bit. Now I'm gonna do that back. Stitch fast, okay. I like this week. Okay, go over again. And then go back. Now it's nice and secure. And then I'm gonna go all the way down. And if you were to make this apron, like say you didn't have canvas fabric, but you want to make a simple one, like you could even use this for somebody at work said it would be great for like a hairdresser or things like that. And I was like, oh, that's so true. I'm actually going to do one more back stitch here just to double secure this pocket as well. But you could use a cotton fabric or a lighter fabric, but I would recommend putting in some stabilizer, some iron-on stabilizer or interfacing to make it a little bit thicker. So there's my first pocket.
So Carly, while you're lining up for the other pocket, I know you said you used a denim needle, but what size did you use?
90.
So a 90 denim needle is the size that Carly is using.
Okay. So you can see, and the chalk will just wash away, but now my pocket, especially because I did that double back stitch, it's nice and secure. So now I'm going to go ahead and sew my line for my larger pocket. Same thing that I just did.
One of the great things about this project is it is great for beginners because you can kind of play around and nothing has to be perfect, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I made a few of these aprons, and one of them I made it, you know, big enough to like fit a hammer and things like that. Other one I made more for my sewing tools. Again, I'm gonna start a little bit up from the edge. And then do my back stitch. That beeping is my iron. They go off on me, but that's okay. So again, if you wanted to add, I think on the other apron I did one little pocket along the edge here where you put like pencils and stuff too. Okay. So I'm just gonna trim my threads really quick. Get that out of the way. So now what we're gonna do is make our straps. Now, I already have sewn one strap together and sewn it to the side. So when you do have your straps done, you'll do kind of like how I sewed this in. You're gonna sew it first just to secure it. And you wanna make sure whenever you sew a strap or a tag, you know, loops, things like that, you always add them and then you put them facing inwards. That when you flip it the right side out, your strap will stick outwards. So to do the strap, now, I put in the dimensions again on the handout. So this is kind of I already folded this, but you're gonna want to take it, actually, here's one. So what you'll do is, this is how big it is without its fold. First you'll fold it in half this way, and I would give it a good press. So that way it keeps it shaped while you're sewing it. And then you're gonna clip all along the side edge. And what we're gonna do is about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, you're gonna sew all the way down the side. And then you're gonna flip it the right side out. And I have one that's already half flipped and I'll show you that. But I'm gonna go ahead and sew this strap just to kind of show you, but you would just sew a straight line down the side, 1/4 of an inch. It's a little long, so I need to stop my speed up. I was like, why is it so slow?
It's a really nice thing with that
Yes.
machine, isn't it?
Having speed control is amazing because, you know, you saw how when I was doing I needed to go slow. If you don't have that speed control, sometimes you will, like, I would probably gone back too far and saw my top stitch above the pocket. So it helps you get the details. So now this is what your strap will look like. Now this is the part, doing straps can be a little tricky, especially if you're new to it. Now there's a couple techniques as far as flipping them. I'm gonna use a safety pin today. So I've already started to flip this strap a little bit, but to kind of show you, I'm gonna take the safety pin out because I don't really need it anymore. where it's at. But to how you kind of get started flipping, and this safety pin is a little small, I would recommend maybe using a larger one. But what you would do is when it gets to be like this, you would take your safety pin and put it in one of the top corners on the opposite side. And then kind of like how when you feed a string through a hoodie or like a waistband, you're gonna have to feed the tube through. So you turn the safety pin in, and I like to kind of just like fold it inward a little bit like this. The hardest part is getting over kind of this beginning part. So I like to kind of like fold it down like this. Now there are tools like a loop turner or things like that, that you can use as well. Sonny, what was the thing that you said earlier?
Bodkin.
A
It's
bodkin.
an old-fashioned tool, but I love it.
I've
Carly.
never used one, so I need to give it a try. So once you get in there, you kind of feed the safety pin and then you slowly pull it through. Like you just take your time. Sometimes it does take a little time. And I was telling Sonny earlier, I'm currently making a shirt right now at home, and it has these tiny, tiny little straps, and you still have to do the same method. Basically, this method of turning a strap is the same for anything. Like, if you have a shirt or a dress with a tiny little strap. So loop turning is real fun, but this is the process of how you basically do it. So you would keep feeding it through, and this is the one that I have this way. So now that I've got this opposite end through, I'm just going to keep pulling it and sandwiching it now all the way through. And this is it's kind of like feed it, pull it.
Just have to be patient.
Yes. And you can see, this is why I kind of got one started, because it can take a little bit of time. This is the part where if this was a video that was pre-filmed, I'd like have the fast forward on. Okay. There we go. So now I have my strap all the way out. So what I would do is first press it, and my iron turned off on me. Turn that back on. But when you close your loop, so I kind of turned mine sewed like a little bit of an angle. You can see here how the hole is smaller on this side, and I closed it just a little bit. So you can see here, this part's sewn. So that way I didn't have to do too much. But what you would do, there's a couple ways, but I'm gonna fold it inward like this. So the fold kind of meets on the inside. So you don't see any of these raw edges. So I'm tucking it in just like this. And this is the part that's also like tricky. So mine's gonna have a little bit of a slant, which is what I honestly wanted. And that's why when I sewed up the side, I kind of did a little bit of a pivot, turned inward, and then stop. So I did leave a smaller hole on the end than this side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in the machine, and now I'm actually gonna move my needle over to the left. And I'm gonna sew as close as I can to this edge to close that hole. You could also do a top stitch if you wanted like the entire strap. And then when you get to the corner, you can pivot and then close that as well. So you would have a stitch all throughout. But I'm just gonna do how I did on my other strap right here, where you'll just see a line there. So I don't know if you guys could see that when I moved my needle. But if you ever need to adjust your needle and you don't have, so this machine allows me to go to the middle and then all the way to the left. But say I wanted to go all the way to the right, you would adjust your stitch length or width if you're in a straight stitch, and it will move your needle over. So if I wanted to go all the way to the right, I would just do that. And actually, I'm gonna actually go up the right because I'm gonna put my strap in this way. So I got my needle all the way over to the right, and that way I could easily sew up this side edge, but keep my presser foot on the strap. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'll just zoom in a tad bit more. All right. So I'm just gonna have one little stitch, and same thing, you want to still do a back stitch so the side of the strap doesn't open up. Go forward. Do a little back stitch. But now you can see I sewed up the side of my strap and you don't see those raw edges. Now, if you wanted, I would obviously recommend pressing the whole strap throughout as well. So actually, I am gonna press it really quick. So I'm gonna go back to camera 3 because I realized that this is the only strap in. So I got my handy dandy little presser right here. This thing is awesome. If you're like wanting to use it, iron right next to your sewing machine. I'm gonna first roll out my edges of this to kind of get it flat. That's it.
Carly, can you say something about that little iron? You know, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so this is actually for the Singer Memento, but you could use it for any project. It doesn't have to be. So it's great for if you are into crafting and you have a crafting machine. And you need to do like iron on vinyl or heat transfer vinyl, projects like that. But it's also great for, you know, getting these small little nooks and crannies and corners, things like that along a garment, or if you're doing quilting and you need to press, you know, your tiny little shapes, these little irons are a game changer because the big ones, you know, they're bulky. You have to usually have them over on the iron table. But this, it fits right next to my machine at my table. So, and they're just easy to take anywhere. You're going to sew, go, pop it up in your bag. And you can adjust the temperature on it, and it has like a, you saw the timer already turned off on me. So we love an iron that automatically shuts off because I don't know if you're like me, but I always forget to turn my iron off, and then I have like OCD and I get down the road and I'm like, did I turn my iron off?
And I like on the bottom, Carly, of it, so there are no steam holes, so when you are doing quilts and different things, it is complete heat all the way
Yeah.
across.
Especially for the crafting, that's kind of why it's like that also, if you're doing that heat transfer vinyl, you don't have those little holes that can cause your vinyl to have different spots that won't get as hot, so. All right, so now my other strap is done. Move my iron back out of the way. So I'm gonna place my other strap, same as I did this one, so it's facing inward. So this is the inside piece, so, and you wanna make sure when you sew these in and clip them, I would say about like half an inch to an inch from this top edge, you wanna make sure you place your strap there. You place your strap in this very top corner. When you sew around in the later step to close the pouch, the apron, when you turn and pivot, you're actually gonna catch the strap here, and it would kind of get messed up within the clipping of the apron. So you wanna make sure, don't put your strap right at the very, very top corner. So I'm gonna do the same for this one, kind of get it pretty even. Let me put one clip to secure it. And then sew that one in with, same as before, where you just sew relatively close to the edge. So I'm gonna actually put my needle to the right. And sew this right here. You don't need to do anything in this other space, just where the strap is. And we're gonna be sewing back over it once more in a minute. This is more so just to get it secure and stay in place so it doesn't slide later on. Actually, I lied. I'm not turning it to the left. I'm turning it all the way to the right. I'm gonna adjust my width again and move it over to the right. That way it's close to that edge. Okay.
Everyone is being quiet today, Carly, but I just put in the chat, what are you gonna use your apron for? Sewing, art, gardening, what else? So lots of different things.
I know if anyone in the chat, I saw somebody was from Massachusetts. Nita
Yeah.
Sani had quite the night here in Nashville. It was storming. There was like 4 tornado warnings. I didn't get any sleep. So if anyone here is from Tennessee, I hope y'all are safe.
Same.
Okay, oops. So now I have both of my straps sewn in, and these look a little long, but that's because they're adjustable. So you might wrap it around the front of your waist a couple times, depending on how you want to tie it. So now before I do the top part, we're flying through this project. I said how I had a couple loops on the side. I'm just gonna add one little loop today, but this is, and in my pamphlet, there was a shorter, you can make a skinnier one or a wider one. You know, this one I kind of intended when I used it, I tucked my hammer inside of it and it kind of would just hang on the side. I feel like, I don't know if that's a thing that carpenters do, but I've seen carpenters have their hammers hang off the side of their aprons and stuff. So I'll show you what you would do is similar to the strap is where when you're gonna tuck it in like this, but to make a small little loop like this, it's pretty easy. So what you'll do is instead of doing the whole loop turn situation, because this is a smaller piece of fabric, what I'm gonna do is first you're gonna fold it in half together so it meets in the middle like this, and then you're gonna want to give it a press so it will keep its shape. I'm gonna give it a press this way.
And we have one for gardening. Lisa's gonna do gardening with hers.
Awesome. I just went to like Lowe's last weekend and I wanted to get a bunch of plants and I was like, I'm just gonna get like 2 plants and I spent like $300. So I definitely need to wear my apron now. I have a lot of plants and things in my backyard I need to take care of. Okay, so then once you have it folded and pressed this way, you're gonna fold it one more time. I always say like a hot dog bun. So it's together and now you can't see any of those raw edges. And if you wanted, you could do this same method to your straps if you didn't want to do the whole turn method. But sometimes it's a little trickier with those straps weren't quite as wide. So, which I guess they were wide. You could do the same thing. So press it again this way, and then maybe add like a couple clips to secure it. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna sew right up the side edge of this to hold this in place. Same thing as when we closed this, I would recommend sewing closer to this edge. So over to my machine. And I'm gonna keep that needle on the right side again like before. And I bumped my stitch length up just a tad bit as well. And if you wanted, you could do just one strap or you can do an opposite one on the other side. Honestly, that makes it a little bit more sturdy. I didn't do that on my example one, but I might just kind of show you guys. So I did up the side here, but if you want, and I recommend this for like straps for like a bag sometimes, if you do the same thing again on that side. So I'm gonna do that also. Show you guys. I'm gonna now move my needle over to the left and then do it up this side. So they're kind of. So now you can see, that looks a little bit better. I might honestly use this denim one instead of the purple one. Actually, what do you guys think? I always ask the audience something. Should I use the denim strap for my little loop or should I use the purple one? But
I wrote it in the chat.
so
Denim or purple?
denim or purple, so it'll be the little loop. I mean, this denim doesn't necessarily match the other fabric I have, but it could still be a nice little accent, to it. So.
Oh, we got a couple denims right now.
Should I do the denim? Switch it out.
You got two denims, so why not? right?
Okay, we'll do the denim. All right, so now to do the denim, now you can, similar how I sewed in the straps, I might also secure it as well. So I want my loop to stick out kind of, I don't know if I want it to be more waist or kind of more near the bottom. It's gonna be extra thick if I put it down here. So I'm gonna actually just do my loop right about here in this area. So I'm going to add one more little stitch to secure that as well. Just same how I did the strap on there. I am going to begin making my stitch length even longer because I'm going to be sewing through several layers of that.
And Carly, Ann just made a comment about denim is thick for the other fabrics. Do you think it'll pull it down or do you think it'll be just fine?
Wait, what do you mean? As far as
Just the canvas isn't quite as thick as the denim.
so I'm gonna add another layer of canvas on top. That's a good question. I've only used my apron a few times and it seemed fine. But these two are canvas. Just my main front pocket is denim, and it's kind of.
I think she was thinking of the loop.
Oh yes, it might. We'll see. You know, that's thick. So when I sew that over that layer, it might be a little tricky. We'll see if it's going to be extra thick. I just like to give you guys a little challenge here. Okay, so I have that secured. All right. So now what you're going to do is you are going to make sure that your straps are out of the way. So when you sew around this entire thing, you don't want to catch the straps anywhere. So I'm going to actually just tuck them inside of my pocket here. Kind of just out of the way. They'll sit like that. And then you're going to take your other large outside piece and you're going to place it on top, just like this. The only part I'm a little nervous about is when I sew over this denim. So keep in mind that wherever your loop is, and I might hate this later depending on where I place it, but we'll see. But so you want to make sure, keep an eye out if you do add a thicker loop, like I use that denim. Whoever asked that question, you're so right. It might be a little thick. We'll see when we get there. But we want to make sure if you do add those extra thick pieces to keep an eye out when you sew around to go over this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip all the way around this rectangle and I'm going to sew around the rectangle with a wider seam allowance. I'm going to do about 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around, and then I'm going to leave a hole at the top edge about this big. So then I can flip it at the end. So I'm just going to put the clips here. And it is extra thick at the bottom, so I'm gonna keep my length really long again. I wanted to use this thicker utility fabric, but keep in mind that it is real thick. Again, you want to make sure that this is tucked down out of the way so you don't catch it. So this, I'm just going to remember between my red clip and my clear one at the top, that is where I'm gonna leave a hole. I would say about 6 inches or so. And this is why I just, so you could technically, if you get to this stage, say you didn't want to take the time to secure the pockets, you could just layer them, flip it all together, and then sew all the way around it. It would still, in theory, sew in those pockets. But the reason I did that is just to add the extra stabilize and so they don't slide throughout. Because I've sewn things before where I'm like, it's all good, it's going to catch it, and then later the pocket slid out of the way. So I'm going to start at one side of my hole. And then sew all the way around, pivot at each corner, and then you get to the opposite side of your hole. That's where you're end. So I got my stitch length up at 4.5 right now. Mainly. So, and I'm gonna go to 5/8 and then so a little bit wider. Getting my back stitch at the beginning. Make sure I don't catch that strap side. Now when I get to the corner here, have my needle down. Pivot. That needle was,
Good thing you had that good needle in.
yes. Did go a little bit further, closer to the edge there, so getting my seam allowance back where it needs to be. So like 4 layers right now, so powering through it. Okay, we're coming up to my denim strap. Fingers crossed. We made it.
Pretty great for that machine, Carly.
Okay,
Love a heavy duty.
yes, almost there. To the end. And turn my strap. Not in the way. At this point, do a back stitch. All right, so then before you flip it the right side out, you want to snip your corners, especially because these corners are going to be pretty bulky. You don't want to random bulky edge. So I'm just gonna snip the corners closer to the seam like that. And if you have a really wide seam allowance, you could snip them down some. That way it's not super bulky and it will get its shape. I like to snip my corners with smaller scissors. Easier, and it takes my fear away that I'm gonna actually accidentally cut into the seam. But I am gonna use some larger scissors and just kind of trim this bottom seam allowance a little bit. just so it's not as thick along the bottom as well. You see that? And this is just the fabric was like the raw edge. It looks like it's spraying, but it's and it's hard to cut through these layers. Okay. Just making a mess. What sewing is all about. Okay, so now what you're gonna do is it's gonna look like this, and you're gonna reach your hand on in and flip it the right side out. So grab one side. Gonna turn my iron back on. Now I see the chat. Denim, yeah. Okay. And this is usually I use like a chopstick or like a point turner. I don't forgot one today, but you really want to push your corners out and get them nice and pointy. So this part, takes a little time as well, just like the tube turning, especially because these corners are pretty thick. So I'm gonna use my scissors. I'm gonna carefully use my scissors to just kind of get the corners out as best as I can. But I recommend I always use chopsticks, but there are like point turners and things like that. I was teaching I don't know if I ever told you this, Sonny, but I was teaching a sewing class, and they use the chopsticks to turn their bag, and this girl was like, "Oh, this is so great. Where can I buy these?" And I was like, "Just go get some takeout." Like, it's just chopsticks. Okay. Oh wait, let me get this. And you see, if I didn't snip those corners, this would even be even bulkier. So really press it, push it with your scissors.
When you use scissors,
Just gotta be really
you
careful.
gotta be careful.
Yeah, that's not the best
So-
advice. I just didn't have my turner with me, or my point turner, and then you're gonna want to just roll your edges as best you can. To kind of get its shape. And then I'm gonna go over to the iron, and where this fold is, so you can see it kind of now has like a natural little fold. You're gonna fold that in and put like a couple clips there to hold it and give it a good press. And then you're gonna do one top stitch along this top edge, and you'll close the hole in the process. And when you do that top stitch, you want to make sure you sew closer to the top edge where you move your needle, because otherwise you're gonna have a weird little flap. So I'm just gonna go over to my iron. And I also could have used like, this, once it's sewn, but this part here, you could use like a seam or anything in the middle also if you don't want that space. Like you want the two to stick together better, but it would be hard when you flip it. So you would probably have to tuck it in there. Fold. Into
Love that center fabric, Carly. What kind of fabric is that? It looks like a home deck sort of fabric.
Yes, it's like a home deck kind of canvas type material. And then this is duck canvas. Okay, Brandon, you can see it's come together. All right, so I'm gonna add a couple clips here. Now, you could do a top stitch. I would say your fabric isn't as thick as mine. You could also do your top stitch all the way around the entire shape. But I'm just gonna do the top because as we noticed earlier, this denim is really big and it's gonna have that seam allowance there. So I just don't want my needle to get stuck. So I'm gonna just do a top stitch along this top edge here and close the hole at the same time. Back to the right.
And just put another comment, which I think is great. You could repurpose curtains, tablecloths, denim pants, anything
Yeah.
like that.
I'm
What
all
a
about repurposing.
Great way to
upcycling.
do it. Yeah,
You could even like take an old pocket from a jean and sew it on, like make little denim pockets on the front. I think that could be
that'd be fun.
fun. All right, so you want to make sure kind of can see the hole also as you sew, so you don't accidentally sew too low or too high. So I'm gonna do the top stitch. Whoa, got crazy on me there. Went a little. Wow, I hit the gas. It is called a foot pedal, but I always call it the gas pedal. I teach kids classes, so that's just how I refer to it. Kids makes me laugh. Guess I got a lick foot. You can see by moving that needle to the right, I'm able to keep, the presser foot on the entire fabric, but I'm still sewing close to that edge, so. Just readjusting it as I go. That is your apron. That was pretty easy, beginner project. Now I know the loop might look a little funny how it hangs off, but if you put like keys or something on it, it will hang down. So once you put it on, you just wrap it around your waist and you kind of adjust it how you want. And then you can put your tools in it. So you can see here is my bigger pocket, and then let me grab my phone here. See? There we go. Is there any other questions?
Think so right now.
Awesome. Well, thanks you guys for tuning in. If you want to come to our next project, Sonny's actually going to be teaching it. And it's going to be kind of a fun twist on sewing where you can make greeting cards or just cards with sewing. So you can do stitch programming. Let me switch to this camera and show you guys. And, you can write and sew things onto cardstock and make custom greeting cards. Kind of fun. So Sonny's going to be teaching that. I think it's April 24th. So hopefully we see you guys again, but thank you all for tuning in. I hope somebody makes these aprons. Yeah. That's a wrap.